Hi, y'all, and welcome to tonight's live stream. We have a huge night tonight. I'm so glad you're here. First, let's start with the case. Did Lori Vallow Daybell and her brother, Alex Cox, conspire to kill Lori's husband, Charles Vallow? In the next few weeks, and probably in the next week, if I don't miss my guess, there will be a jury deciding that very question. So tonight we are going to take a look at the evidence the state has brought so far. We're going to be asking the question, how are they doing? Is Arizona proving that Lori Vallow Daybell is guilty beyond a reasonable doubt? You'll watch actual clips and we will talk about what it means legally for Lori Vallow Daybell. Plus a huge channel announcement, really two. Idaho, and now let's explain a little more about the case if you aren't up on it. Idaho has already found Lori Vallow Daybell guilty of 2 murders, her own children, JJ and Tylee, and conspiracy to murder Tammy Daybell, the wife of the man that Lori then married 2 weeks later. So Lori is already serving life in prison in Idaho for those crimes. But before any of those happened, Lori's husband was shot in Lori's home by her brother. She says it was self-defense. The state of Arizona says no, it was murder. So I'm going to take you on a whirlwind tour through 5 areas of evidence that the state is showing in the case. But I want to start with the announcements because they are huge. I have huge news on our green chili chicken enchiladas recipe contest. We have a very special taste tester to announce. Now, if you've been following the case, you know that Lori is representing herself, which means she has cross-examined her own brother, Adam. Now, this is Adam, not Alex, not the one who shot Charles Vallow, because Alex is deceased. This is Adam. He's the one who testified he did not shoot Charles Vallow. Now, you would think that the reason she would be most upset with her brother Adam is because he believed she had really strange, bizarre religious beliefs, and he was working with her husband to try to get her to break out of those. But actually, what seemed to bother her the most was that her brother Adam did not remember the green chili chicken enchiladas that she says she brought to family functions for 10 years. So we're on a quest to find a more memorable recipe for chicken enchiladas. I said, send me your very best. And 16 of you sent in mouth-watering recipes for us to consider. Well, I should say 15 of them were mouth-watering. And then there was Imelda's entry from her Uncle Will. You'll just have to read that one and decide for yourself, but it definitely gets a most interesting award. Also, you have to read number 14, AJ Osteen's recipe. Lots of thought went into that one. So we have a major announcement about this contest, but even before we get to that, I have the actual secret recipe used by Lori Vallow Daybell. One of our subscribers, Becky Rivers, uncovered this recipe. At least she believes she did. I'm going to show it to you now. This is groundbreaking journalism. No one else has this. You may want to take a minute and go grab paper and pencil. You can pause if you need to, but go ahead. Okay, are you ready? It's my understanding that this right here is Lori Vallow Daybell's secret recipe for chili. Now, why would Adam Cox not recall that? Seems like it would be pretty memorable to me. Although I did tell Becky I wasn't sure so much that this was Lori's recipe as maybe she had found my secret recipe, because in my view, this is at least a 4-step recipe. You have to open the can, you have to pour it into a bowl, you have to microwave it, and then you're going to want to top it with cheese. 4 steps. This is a complex recipe, in my opinion. So apparently, I don't know for sure that Becky is right, but it certainly does seem like it's hard to understand why Adam Cox would not remember that one. But in any event, now for our super huge channel announcement, we have a very special guest taste tester. In fact, you're not going to believe me when I tell you, you're going to be very excited. Our special guest taste tester will be Adam Cox himself. That's right, Adam, Lori's brother, the one who could not remember her recipe, her green chili chicken enchiladas, is going to judge our green chili chicken enchiladas. So we're going to know for sure whether your recipe is more memorable than Lori Vallow Daybell. So here's how we're going to do it. Now, it's too big to put onto the YouTube posts that we do. 16 recipes is a lot. So here's what I did. I opened a Substack. I've been planning to do that anyway because I was going to do a true crime newsletter. Not quite there yet. So, but in any event, it's totally free to go there and join my Substack. And if I ever have a newsletter, you'll be on the list. I may even add a pay newsletter later, but that's not for a while. So you would have to opt in to do that. It's totally free to go and you can vote there. So we are going to put in the chat exactly how you get there. How do you vote in this? And let's see, let me get the mods. Marlon, would you mind posting that for us and saying exactly what's going to happen? So let me kind of talk through exactly how, there we go. There's the recipe. There's actually an easier way you can get to it. I think it's lawyerlee.substat.com or some lawyerleewsubstat.com, something like that. I'll find it before the end. But so when you join my Substack, what you're going to see is the 16 recipes, and there are 3 polls in there because the most they'll give you that you can vote between is 5. So I did 5. I'm sorry, Imelda, but Uncle Will's recipe was not included, although it was excellent. I just felt like maybe for safety reasons, we wouldn't want to include that. But you can read Imelda's when you get in there. So you'll vote among the first 5 and also vote among the next 5 and also vote among the third 5. So do that and you'll have voted for all of them. We are going to take our top 3 winners. And we are going to get some help. Now, Adam Cox and Lori's Uncle Rex have a podcast called Silver Linings. In fact, the 2 of them were on our channel about maybe a year ago. And Kimberly she actually helps them with the podcast. Kimberly helps run that channel along with her good friend, Lindsay Gandy. They also have their own podcast and their own channel. So Kimberly is going to prepare the top 3 enchilada recipes for us that win in our poll and ship them on dry ice to Adam. And Adam will select our winner of the way more memorable than Lori's green chili chicken enchiladas contest. So what do you win? Well, you win fame and glory, of course. And if you want to, we will have you call into the show, or you can pop on for a few minutes and I can ask you questions about how you came up with your memorable chicken enchiladas recipe. And you can tell us about it, but you don't have to. So anyone can vote. And if you have submitted an entry, know a couple of things. One, I gave everything a creative law chicken enchilada kind of funny name. If you don't like the name, just let me know. I'll switch it up. If you have a better one that you think will get you more votes, let me know about that too. And send the link to everybody you know and get them to come vote. There's nothing wrong with that. That's entirely legal, permitted, encouraged. So send it out to everybody you know and get as many votes as you can so you can win the chance to be in the final taste test round with Adam Cox himself. All right, so I need to do a shout out to the first 5 and then let's get started. Go Duke Basketball, Desert Rose, Scar Motley and me, Sky Goddess 87, and Angel LaFawn. Welcome. So here are the categories of evidence that I want to talk about that the state has been showing to the jury. The first is Alex's and Lori's demeanor after the shooting. And the next is Alex's lack of injuries, despite the fact that he supposedly was attacked by a metal baseball bat. The third is the lack of evidence that there was any CPR performed on Charles Vallow. Fourth is the fact that Charles Vallow, according to the state, was shot while on the ground. So he wasn't, in other words, attacking. There wasn't any need for self-defense. And then fifthly, I want to talk about potential motives. And I think the state has presented 3 possibilities for the jury to consider. So let's get started with some of our video.
Did you observe him sweating at all when he first came out?
We will add that again.
Any type of jitters?
No.
Any uneven or broken voice as he's talking to you?
No.
At some point, did you notice an injury to him?
I did.
And where was it?
On the back of his head, towards his right side.
And what did you see?
I articulated my written report as about an inch laceration, a small like knot, and it was bleeding a little bit.
Can you describe
what that is.
during the transport?
Calm. We just talked about things not related to this at all, just a conversation between like me and you, normal, average tone, calm.
And did you stay with him at the police station until a detective arrived?
Yes.
Can you describe for us?
Let me
Lori Vallow's
stop it
demeanor
right
as you
there
were
and
interacting
talk for
with her?
just a minute. So what the detective is talking about is the fact that Alex Cox, Lori's brother, had supposedly just been attacked by Charles Vallow with a metal bat. Tylee brought it out when she heard a commotion outside her bedroom door. She brought the bat out to protect her mother. Charles Vallow took it away from her, and he hit Alex Cox with it, according to what Alex and Lori said. Alex then went and got a gun and shot Charles Vallow, he says, in self-defense. Well, he said in self-defense. He's no longer alive to tell that story. Lori Vallow Daybell was there when it happened, and now she was coming back onto the scene of her home, which was surrounded by police vehicles. She was being questioned by police about the death of her husband an hour or two beforehand. And despite those circumstances, nobody seemed to be very nervous or emotional or upset really in any way. Everyone was calm. Lori kept making little jokes. Just nothing about the way they were acting made sense to law enforcement. So, and remember this, when Alex was hit by a metal bat, he was hit by Charles Vallow, who had actually played baseball in the minor league. So he would have had quite a wallop, even though he was now in his 60s. He was extremely fit. Numerous witnesses have told us. So here is what, and so you just heard from Robert Krautheim, a retired officer from the Chandler Police Department. And now we're going to hear about what Lori was like when she showed up. She was in the house at the time that Charles Vallow was shot. She says she wasn't looking directly at it. She then left to go take JJ and Tylee. To take JJ, but she took Tylee with her to school. And now she's come back. So her husband's killed and she leaves to take her son to school. Now she's back. And think of this in kind of the setting. Her brother just shot and killed her husband in her house. Her husband was estranged from her. They were working things out, but they were not divorced. They were trying to figure out custody and visitation and things like that. Now, so the police are going to find out from her that she was there at the time. And she says, as I said, that she didn't see it. So let's hear what he says.
Calm, nonchalant.
He was asked, can you describe for us Lori Vallow's demeanor as you were interacting with her? And he says, calm, nonchalant.
Matter of fact, just talking to me as I'm talking to you now.
When you went to speak with Lori Vallow, can you tell us approximately how many police cars were parked around there?
Well, I don't know either myself. I know there was at least mine and Officer Wiz's. There's a fire truck there. I think there was an ambulance there. And I think there may have been another police car. I can't remember, but there was a lot of emergency vehicles just near the home itself.
And we're going to switch to Captain Kent Keller, also retired Chandler, but this time of the fire department.
Did you overhear her talking or saying anything?
I did overhear her talking with the police officers, or someone said something about not getting invited to a pool party because of the commotion at the house or something.
After you had talked with Alex Cox and Lori Vallow, did you go brief some of the detectives about what you had learned?
I did.
Did you tell the detectives that Lori Vallow did not know their husband Charles was dead?
Let's stop that for a minute. So think of this now. Police cars everywhere, husband dead in your house, your brother being questioned by the police. What would your reaction be? And yet you've just heard what Lori Vallow's was. And now the officer is going to say he thought she was so calm. He figured she did not even know that her husband had just been killed. They think they're going to have to break the news to her.
I told them that I did not advise her of such.
Okay. Did you believe that she did not know that her husband was dead?
I did.
Why did you believe that?
Well, I was under the understanding that this just happened. She just arrived back on scene, and I did not advise her of what happened in the house.
When you spoke with Alex Cox, did he provide additional information that made you believe that she was not present when the shooting happened?
Yes.
I'm not sure why it's so fast, but I do listen to it fast, but I thought I slowed it down for y'all. So anyway, my apologies, or maybe you like it that way. So next, I want you to actually see Lori Vallow Daybell at the scene. She was captured on body cam, and you can kind of see for yourself what she was like, what her demeanor was. You can see her making some small jokes.
Not in Santan, this is your home?
Right,
Gotcha.
right.
Okay.
We just moved in here.
Gotcha. How long have you guys lived here?
I'm sorry?
How long have you lived here?
Like 3 weeks.
Oh, geez. Yeah, okay.
That's why the neighbors took the last week.
Gotcha.
Like, hi neighbor, sorry.
Are you working at all?
No.
Lori-
Small, like knot, and it was
I don't know why I'm getting that weird noise in there. Maybe it's speeding it up too. So Lori had a hard time, at least so far she has, combating this, because the point she wanted to make was, well, the scene was calm and my mood was just reflecting the scene. And the problem is that she kept asking the question wrong. She asked, what would be normal for me to do in the situation? You'll hear her do that now.
leading a little bit.
Can you describe his demeanor during the transport?
Calm. We just talked about things not related to this at all. Just a conversation between like me and you, normal, average tone, calm.
And did you stay with him at the police station until a detective arrived?
Yes.
Can you describe for us Lori Vallow's demeanor as you were interacting with her?
Calm, nonchalant, just kind of a matter of fact, just talking to me as I'm talking to you now.
I think I scooted it back. Let's see.
Detectives that Lori Vallow did not know their husband Charles was dead?
I told them that I did not advise her of such.
Okay. Did you believe that she did not know that her husband was dead?
I did.
Why did you believe that?
Well, I was under the understanding that this just happened. She just arrived back on scene, and I did not advise her of what happened in the house.
When you spoke with Alex Cox, did he provide additional information that made you believe that she was not present when the shooting happened?
Yes.
Not in Santan, this is your home?
Okay, we'll scoot past that and move over here. Okay. So she's asking, what would be, well, let's go ahead and go a little
Is that
further.
a question?
Yes.
Oh, yes, you were calm.
No, I'm saying when I arrived at the scene itself was calm environment.
It was.
Okay. So if I would have been hysterical, that would have been more out of character than if I was calm when everybody else was being calm. Isn't that correct?
Speculation.
Sustain.
So the thing is, she's asking the question incorrectly. She's asking, what would be normal for me to do? And he has no way to answer that. He has no way to know what would be normal for her. That would be speculation for him. So she could have made the same point with a little bit different approach, but she doesn't have the experience really to do that. She could have just asked, well, wasn't it very calm? And in fact, aren't you trained to keep everyone calm? Isn't that very important to keep everyone calm? And you would say, I was calm, so you were successful. But the entire argument is really flawed because it just doesn't make a lot of sense, because Lori was there at the time of the shooting. She's just come back. Her husband has been killed by her brother in her house. There are all these vehicles around, police vehicles. Her brother's being questioned. It's just the reason that law enforcement is trained to keep people calm in this situation is because it's not normal. It's really unusual for someone to be calm in this kind of a situation. And in fact, it doesn't make a lot of sense for that to be the case.
There was police cars, correct?
Yes.
There was a CSI van, correct?
She was parked somewhere. I don't know where.
Next to the house, kind of, I guess, south of the house. So there was nowhere to park except for across the street. Is that correct?
No,
That's not correct?
that is not correct.
Where else could I have parked?
Well, the street's long. You could have parked anywhere along the street. You could have parked on the other street. That's where I parked. Or you could park on the other side of the street, south of the home, where there was plenty of parking. So there was other options to park.
But I parked as close as I could to the scene so that I could come talk to you. Is that correct?
Speculation, testifying.
Sustain.
So again, she's getting into her head talking about why she parked there. What she's trying to get the officer to say is she parked as close as she could because she wanted to cooperate. She wanted to help law enforcement. She was hiding nothing. That's what she would like to point out, but he can't really, the way she's asked it, he can't really answer on her motives. And that's what she went straight to asking. So the bigger problem, though, with her explanation is still that it just doesn't make sense, because she knows her husband is dead or at a minimum injured, and she never even asks about him. She doesn't ask, how is he doing? Is he getting treatment? And the prosecutor does a pretty good job pointing out that the way she is acting is not just a reflection of the scene. Here's how the prosecutor
And
did
you
it.
had advised that he was nonchalant and calm, right?
Yes.
And you were asked whether or not you were nonchalant and calm too, correct?
Yes.
Had you just shot someone?
No.
You were asked if the firefighters were calm and nonchalant. Had they just shot someone?
As far as I know, no.
How about Officer Wiz? You said he was nonchalant and calm too. Had he just shot anyone?
No.
So it's not really exactly the same to compare you to the shooter, right?
Correct. I would not compare us.
When you went up to the scene, you had your gun drawn on him, correct? Did you?
So again, that's something that would really stand out to most people. For Alex Cox to remain completely calm when officers approach him with drawn guns, he's just killed someone. It's odd that he's that calm, and equally odd that Lori is that calm, or at least also odd. And it wasn't just Alex Cox's demeanor that they thought was odd, or Lori's demeanor. It was also how little injured Alex Cox was, because supposedly he's just been hit in the head by a metal baseball bat swung by a former minor league baseball player, and he just doesn't really seem all that injured.
Notice any injuries to him?
He was holding, it was a white rag at the time. It was just kind of red and white. He was holding on the back of his head.
When he first exited or later?
As he's coming out of the house.
Did you notice any difficulty walking or talking when you first had contact with him?
No.
Any difficulty sitting or standing?
No.
Did you learn the name of this person?
I did.
What was his name?
Alex Cox.
Was there
And next is Scott Cowden, who's a firefighter and paramedic with the Chandler Fire Department.
anything about this male that you saw when you observed him entering or exiting that made you believe that he had been injured?
No.
And this is actually the injury. You're seeing it right now. I'll stop it for just a minute. That is the back of Alex Cox's head while he was being interviewed by the police right after the shooting. And you can see the trickle coming down. That is the injury, and it goes on for a few seconds. Okay, so, but that was it. Alex Cox didn't have any other injuries because they looked for any other injuries on him. There was nothing in the house, they pointed out, to show bleeding. They looked all through the house. They didn't find bloody towels or paper towels in the trash can, and they just didn't find anything. And of course, you know, you don't always bleed externally when you get hit in the head, but it is one more piece of the puzzle for the state. And now an unpleasant legal truth is going to rear its ugly head for, or maybe it's its just head, for Lori. Alex told the police he shot Charles Vallow in self-defense, but Lori is not going to be able to get what Alex Cox said into evidence. Here's the discussion. Give it a second.
Did Alex tell you that he got hit in the head with the bat?
Objection, Your Honor. Hearsay prior ruling.
Yeah, it's sustained. You can't ask questions of what Alex said.
Now, the reason for that is that Alex is deceased and he's not present to testify to that. So the state will be allowed to use statements of his because he is considered a co-conspirator, and they're allowed to use statements of the co-conspirator against Lori Vallow Daybell. But other statements are hearsay without him being present and able to testify to them. So she is not going to be able to use those statements in her defense. That's really ironic, considering that many people believe that Lori Vallow Daybell played a role in Alex Cox's death. But the autopsy report, I should say, indicated Alex died of natural causes. So even though he died just a few short months after this, There was nothing in the autopsy report that suggested Lori Vallow Daybell had anything to do with it. So Lori is also not going to be able to use the statements of her daughter Tylee that were made right at the same time, right after this incident. And she also said Alex was acting in self-defense. So I'll be honest, it's really difficult to say this when it comes to Lori Vallow Daybell, but to me, it doesn't seem fair that the state can use Alex's statements and Lori cannot use them. And I just think that's because I don't think the jury is getting the whole truth if they get pieces. So to me, I think the conspiracy law goes too far in the amount it gives to the prosecution by not allowing for everything to be put in. But I will say this, it's really hard maintaining that view in this particular case, just because of what this case is all about. But that is, in general, my view. So the demeanor of Alex and Lori, the lack of injuries to Alex, those were two important points that the state put in. But they also put in evidence about how little effort was made to save Charles, because it appeared no one had performed CPR on him. And this is despite the fact that Alex told the 911 operator that he was busy performing CPR. So we go back to Scott Cowden from the fire department.
Upon your training and experience and what you observed and did in this case, would you agree that the victim, Charles Vallow, was dead before you entered the house?
Yes.
Based upon your
Let
training.
me stop it right there. First of all, I need to say thank you to Jackie P for gifting 5 Lawyer League memberships. I appreciate your doing that. This is a perfect time to do that because we are about, and I'll pull this out, we are about to have our members only session right after this. We will be having our very next one. So I see that Crystal Johnson is a new member, and right after this, if you're a member, you should receive, and if you have your notifications turned on, you should receive a notification and you can click through and go to our members only. In addition, if you can always go to my channel and click through to the members only if you're a member. So what we are writing a true crime novel, and we are on chapter 2 and 3. We're working on that now. We started with our first session. We got through chapter 1, and I've expanded on that a little bit. And then we had the associate level and partner level members came up with 3 villains. So now we're going to introduce that to the big group. It is a blast. We do lots of polls and interactive, and it's a lot of fun. So if you're a member, and if you're not a member, you can join by hitting the join button right beside my channel name. If you're on your iPhone, you'll need to go in through your browser to do that rather than being in the app. But we would love to see you tonight. Also, Jackie has gifted 5 Lawyer League memberships, so you can turn on your ability to receive a gifted lawyer membership, and maybe YouTube will pick you. So there were a number of facts that made EMTs think that nobody had given Charles Vallow CPR. For one thing, he had open gunshot wounds, but there wasn't a lot of blood around him. It was mostly just pooled under him. And they said if someone had given him CPR, it would have been much more than that. There also would have been blood on the front of him rather than just pooled under him. And there was a small amount of blood at his neck. They said they would have expected a lot more than that if he had been given CPR with 2 bullet wounds. And it also does seem to me that Alex would have had bloody knees from kneeling beside the body, that he would have probably had a bloody shirt from getting down to give CPR if he had really done that. But the last reason was that the EMT said that when you first start CPR, there's a crack sound, but it only happens right at first, and then it's done and you can keep going. So when they got there, no one was doing compressions. And when they started, they heard that telltale crack. And they said that meant no one had been doing CPR before they got there. So CPR might have kept Charles Vallow alive, but even more critically, obviously not shooting him would have kept him alive. And as our fourth point, some of the state experts testified that someone shot Charles while he was on the ground. It was the second shot, but the second shot, he was already on the ground. And the state says, well, that can't be self-defense. If he's already down and he's not coming at you, you don't need to shoot him again. So it started with a law enforcement expert, Daniel Coons, a retired Chandler Police Department detective, who testified that someone stood in the area of Charles's feet and shot him. Now, Lori tried really hard to keep this witness from being used as an expert, but she was not successful.
Experience in what you observed and did in this case, would you agree that it was highly unlikely that anyone had performed CPR on Charles Vallow prior to you doing that?
Yeah.
Were you able at
Here's
that
the
point to
next part.
start, have any concept or have a idea of what would be consistent with where the shooter may have been and where Mr. Vallow may have been for that shot?
Yes.
What did you base that on?
Again, a lot of the factors that have been discussed, the location of the projectile, item number 4, the defect in the floor that was underneath him, the location of the second casing. It was all consistent with the shooter having been at the feet, not necessarily right upon the feet of Mr. Vallow, but in that direction, close enough so that the projectile could, again, bounce off that wall and land on the west wall.
The projectile or the
Or
casing?
the casing, sorry.
Given that information that you had at that time, were you able to draw any conclusions as to whether or not the evidence was consistent with Charles Vallow being laying on the ground when he was shot?
Very much so in the position that you see him. He was, the second shot that entered the abdomen would have been where he was lying.
So, of course, if someone stands there after he's already down and shoots him again to make sure he's dead, the state's saying that's not self-defense. He's not coming after you. He's not even able to get up. He's on the ground. So shooting him a second time would show that this is cold-blooded, intentional murder. That's the state's argument. And instead, they say somebody was making sure Charles Vallow didn't survive. This was not self-defense. So one of the key facts, according to the witness, was that there was a hole below Charles's shoulder where the bullet hit the floor, a divot, a mark in the floor, and then it ricocheted into the nearby floor molding. So in her cross, Lori tried to argue that the divot might have been caused when Charles, and there was something called shoring, where they said it's hitting the ground, and that we can tell that because we see this divot, and also we see that the bullet's a little bit misshapen because it hit the ground before it moved on and hit into the wall. And she said, well, look, he was wearing a t-shirt and it was really tight, and tight clothing could cause that characteristic that you see that looks like shoring. It wasn't hitting the floor. It was hitting the tight t-shirt that he was wearing. But she could not get this witness or the next one to agree to it. Give it a second.
Were you aware that on July 29th, 2019, my husband was wearing a $200 bamboo workout shirt?
Objection to relevance.
He can answer if he knows.
I have no idea what the cost is.
Are you aware that bamboo is a heavy-duty fabric, not to rip or tear except under extreme conditions?
I've not done any research into bamboo fabric.
Okay. So could this fabric of his shirt have caused the wound to be short?
It could have been a contributor, but it would not have been in this particular case.
Why so?
The body would have been on the floor where the bullet defect was in the floor.
So you just said in your report earlier that a short wound could be caused by tight clothing. Is that correct?
Correct.
And you're saying that could not have happened in this case?
The shirt did not appear to be tight clothing to me.
Well, it was made of bamboo, as we established, right? Is that correct?
I am taking your word for it. I do not know that it's a bamboo shirt.
Okay. And you did not investigate that at all?
No, ma'am.
So I will say this. I once got bamboo sheets and I didn't like them. I thought they were really hot, but they were nothing like a chain mail or anything that would stop a bullet. And they were just ordinary sheets. So I don't think this is really a very good argument. And I'm sure somebody on the jury has bought something out of bamboo and they'll say the same thing. But the witnesses were talking about the fact that there were 2 wounds to Charles. One went through the heart, exited at the back. That appeared to be, from what they say, fairly straight on, like he was standing up and someone shot him. Then there was another that entered at the abdomen and exited upward toward and at the left shoulder. So law enforcement said that bullet casing, or that bullet, was buried in the molding at the floor level. And that meant the person who shot Charles the second time was several feet away from him, and they weren't being attacked, and that Charles was on the ground. So the medical examiner agreed Charles Vallow was on the ground when he was shot the second time.
In this entrance wound, did you note any stippling?
I did not.
Any soot?
No.
So would that tell you that the individual or the muzzle of that gun was more than 4 or 5 feet away from the victim?
Most likely, yes.
Did you recover a projectile from this gunshot wound?
I did not.
So there was an exit wound associated with it.
Correct.
Now put up Exhibit 175. Where was the exit wound?
It was on the back of the left shoulder.
What did you note about this exit wound?
This exit wound appears a little bit atypical. It has characteristics of a supported or a shored exit wound.
What is a shored exit wound?
A short exit wound occurs when the body is pressed up against a firm surface while the bullet is exiting the skin.
Does that cause sort of this different tearing that we see going on here in that exit wound?
It does.
If a person was, for instance, laying on the floor when they were shot, would you expect to see a short exit wound in that situation?
I would.
When you're talking about something pressed up against the skin, have you ever seen a short wound from someone wearing a t-shirt?
I have not.
So Lori tried really hard to get him to say that it could be the t-shirt, that the bamboo shirt would be different and unique enough that maybe it would have stopped the bullet, and not stopped it, but made this shored look as if it had hit something. So, but I think the biggest opportunity that she had to talk about was that the first wound, the biggest missed opportunity was the first wound they talked about was only about 1 3/4 inches but from being straight going through him. And that hit the heart. That was the shot that killed him. According to the medical examiner, he would have died within 2 minutes of that. So that's probably the one that put him on the ground. So, and the fact that this was almost straight through suggests that he was standing up and the person who shot him was standing up. The second one was made while he was lying on the ground. But that means the first time, if they were both standing up, it's at least possible maybe that he was engaging in self-defense, but she didn't ask any of those questions. She didn't really get into that. She really seemed to focus on the idea that this bamboo shirt might have stopped the bullet, might have created the look that there had been a shored bullet.
Exit wound that we see in 168 to determine that front to back, and then you said right to left and slightly downward?
Yes.
So the downward is the 1 1/4 inch difference that you saw from the head measurement.
Correct.
Could that downward angle be the result of someone just holding a gun at a slightly downward angle?
Yes, that's possible.
Could it be also from just the arm itself moving up or down some?
Yes.
Or a size difference between people?
Yes.
You're not here to tell us which one of those it was, correct?
I can't determine that, no.
What was the wound path for this gunshot wound that entered Charles's chest and exited his back?
So it passed through the skin of the chest, the sternum, which is the breastbone, the pericardium, which is a sac that surrounds the heart. It then hit 2 chambers of the heart, the right atrium and the left ventricle. And then it passed through the 9th thoracic vertebral body and exited the soft tissue and skin of the left back.
So for lay people, it went through Charles's heart.
Yes.
Was that wound immediately fatal?
Not immediately, no.
Could Charles have lived for some period of time after this?
A short period of time, but yes.
Are you able to say when someone is struck in the heart, could they live from seconds up to minutes?
Seconds up to a very few minutes, yes.
Up to, have you testified previously or indicated previously in an interview that it could be up to maybe 2 minutes?
Yes.
When a person is shot in the heart such as this, could Charles have still spoken for that time period?
Yes.
Could he have moved after that bullet went through his heart?
He could have, yes.
So would it be possible for him to reach up and touch where he was shot with his left hand?
Yes.
Given the abrasions to Charles's knees, is it possible that he fell to his knees after he was shot?
It's possible, yes.
Would those abrasions on his knees be consistent with someone falling to their knees?
Yes.
Do you
So putting it all together, here's what the prosecutor is suggesting, that Charles was shot standing up. He fell to his knees, scraped them. His left hand clutched the wound through his heart, which then explained why he had some blood on one hand, only one. And then a second shot was fired while he was lying on the ground to make sure he was dead. So that's not 100% inconsistent with self-defense, because he was actually killed by that first shot, the one through the heart. And that shot came while he was standing up, while he was facing the shooter, and within 4 feet. But I think the prosecutor's point is, why then would, if all this is self-defense, there would have been no need for the second shot. It's more what the second shot tells us about the reason this was done and about the purpose of it, which was to make sure he was killed. It wasn't just self-defense. That's what the prosecution is arguing. So, and I want to take a moment to say too, this is, I realize it's easy for us to get heavy into the legal side of things and to think, you know, okay, what does this mean legally? But this is a human life, and I can only imagine how hard it is for his family to deal with this and to be confronted with this as part of the trial. It is obviously an extremely serious, very sad situation. So I don't want us to miss understanding and remembering that, even while we're dealing with the legal part of it. So the fifth area that the state has really worked on proving is motive. And I think they did it with 3 different potential motives. The first is this belief that Lori appeared to have that Charles was inhabited by an evil spirit and therefore might need to be killed. And they haven't really gotten to the might need to be killed, just the inhabited by an evil spirit part. Next, that Lori might want to free herself to marry Chad Daybell. In fact, she married him just a few months later, 2 weeks after his wife mysteriously died. She's been convicted of conspiring to murder Tammy Daybell as well. And then thirdly, that Lori wanted to collect money from life insurance and from Social Security. So to prove that evil spirit part, the state put in evidence from some of Lori's friends, church friends, who talked about her telling them that Charles had this evil spirit and she wanted them to help her cast it out in castings. And they were all members of the Church of Jesus Christ of the Latter-day Saints. You may know it as the Mormon Church. I typically am trying to refer to it as LDS, which is what I think the church tends to refer to itself as now. But they're Mormon, LDS, you may have different names for it. That's the church I'm talking about. So do you recall telling, well, let me go ahead and play her testimony for you.
Recall telling police that Lori was talking about Charles being dark or having a dark spirit?
Yes.
The shooting of Charles by Alex was about a month after you had heard him say he wanted to kill Charles, correct? Did she ever tell you that she was joking about her husband being...
I need to tell you a lot more before we get to that. So Lori said she was, she started with just unhappy with Charles. And she left him for a while. In fact, she went to Hawaii and she left Charles with their son, JJ, and she left her daughter with Alex. she came back, but she was still having trouble with Charles. She said he was trying to take her temple recommend away. That would give her certain privileges within the LDS temple. So Lori gathered together this group of women to cast out Charles's dark spirit. They were gathered, I think, for just a social event, but during it, she asked them to pray for her family and to get rid of this spirit. She gave it a name. Christina Atwood couldn't remember it, but I know that everyone in the audience who has followed this case was, Ned, it's Ned. But at Lori's request, so they hold this casting, but Charles's evil spirit is just tough. It hangs in there. It hangs on tenaciously, doesn't leave. So it happens more than once. But meanwhile, Alex and Lori are starting to make more and more sinister statements. For example, Alex talked about wanting to kill Charles Vallow. And Lori talked about crushing up some of JJ's medication and putting it in Charles's drink. So this witness, Christina Atwood, confronted Lori saying, now that's very disturbing, you know. And Lori said, oh, we were just being silly. We were playing off each other. We didn't really mean anything by it. So Lori also sort of backtracked and said, oh, it wasn't really that much of the drug. And according to this witness, she'd been very clear it was a lot of the drug the day before. The witness did tell Lori, I'm going to go to the police if anything happens to Charles. She actually did not end up doing that, though. But Lori's religious beliefs and the ones around all of this evil spirit, according to the witnesses so far, that is very far from the traditional LDS faith. That Lori told the women, for example, she no longer needed to repent. And they believe this was against the LDS religion. So Alex, as I mentioned, made some statements about wanting to kill Charles Vallow. But the big question for the state, and I think the biggest question for the jury, is going to be, was Lori in a conspiracy with Alex? This is what I think is about as close as the state is going to get. So let's go ahead and hear this. It's a long way from direct evidence.
Possessed?
No.
Did she ever tell you she was joking about him having this dark spirit inhabiting him?
No.
And did she ever, you told us that she told you there was a name for this spirit that you don't recall now, correct?
Yes.
Did she ever tell you she was joking about that?
No. He stated he wished that he could just kill Charles.
Okay. Was Lori around when he was saying this?
Yes, one of the times.
Okay. So he said it more than once.
Yes.
Can you describe first part of his demeanor when he's saying this about wanting to just kill Charles?
It was jocular.
And you said one of the times that he said this, it was around Lori.
Yes.
Did she react in any way to hearing her brother say that he wished she could just kill her husband?
Not that I recall.
Did you overhear Lori ever tell him, you can't kill my husband?
No.
Or why would you say such a thing like that?
No.
Did it seem to have any impact that you recall on her?
No.
So the second motive that the state has talked about is Lori getting some Social Security benefits after Charles died, because she got two kinds. She got $1,951 a month for JJ as a child, and she also got $1,951 for herself as mother with child in care. So roughly nearly $4,000 a month. She got another, I believe it was something close to $2,000 for Tylee. So she was getting at least $5,000 or so a month. From the questions that Lori and that the jury asked, it honestly didn't seem like either kind of understood what the state was trying to argue, at least what I think they're trying to argue. Lori was asking a lot of questions that seemed kind of irrelevant, and then like about whether she should have been receiving spousal benefits versus mother with child and care benefits. And I don't know why that mattered. The jury also was very focused in some questions they asked on taking the funds, whether or not that would be illegal. And I think what the state was trying to do was say I don't think they were asking about whether or not this was illegal. They were trying to focus on the fact that her motive was to get these funds. She wanted to make sure she got funds, and she thought she would get his insurance. She wanted to make sure she could get his Social Security benefits. So I think that was the point that the state was trying to make. And the jury, I'm not sure that it connected. It seemed like they were asking different questions. Like they were asking, were payments to Lori Vallow stopped after your investigation? They asked the witness. And they asked, did Lori Vallow notify you of her new marriage? And the answer to that was no. But it isn't fraud that they were prosecuting her here for. There were some elements of that were prosecuted in Idaho, but that's not an issue here in this particular case. So another huge matter that they were asking for was a beneficiary change form where Lori believed that she was going to get the $1 million life insurance policy for Charles Vallow. But it turned out that just a matter of months before he was killed, he changed the beneficiary to his sister, Kay Woodcock. And so Lori, actually, they played the phone call where she called the insurance company and said, isn't there some insurance for me? I'm the beneficiary. She told them that very assuredly. She was clearly surprised and upset that Charles had changed the policy and that she was not going to get this large payout. So this is Robin Smith Scott from Banner Life Insurance.
What's the date of Mr. Vallow's passing? July 11th. And what was the cause of his passing?
This is call number 1.
Well, he was shot. Okay, so I don't know how I want to put that. Okay, all right. And I hate to ask, but is it? Yeah, you can just say yes or no. Was it a homicide? No, it was an accident. An accident. Okay. Mm-hmm. Okay.
Here.
Okay. Are you aware of who the primary beneficiary of the policy is? It's me.
So she very assuredly told her, I'm the beneficiary. Turns out that was wrong. But notice also, she was asked that question, what happened to Mr. Vallow? What happened to your husband? And she said, long hesitation, really had to think about that. And finally she says, accident? She says it was shot. And then they say, well, okay, I have to ask, was it a homicide? And she says, no, it was an accident. So that's her statement. That is not the same thing she told the police. She told the police it was self-defense, not an accident. She also said then that it wasn't homicide, but she said that it was not accidental, but self-defense. So that is pretty different. So, but notice Lori was really sure she was the beneficiary. She is about to find out over the next weeks that she's not, that Kay Woodcock is the beneficiary. When she gets that news, she calls to find out more and starts with a strong story about it being changed.
Okay, so in your voicemail, you stated that you had something that stated you are the beneficiary of the policy?
Right, so I have the original policy where I was the beneficiary, the sole beneficiary, and then we changed the policy to where I was 80% and we added 2 people, the Porches, who invested in our company for each 10%. And that's the last one I have. That's the last update that I have. So can you tell me when that was changed again?
I really can't give too much information, but I can tell you that the beneficiary was changed in March of this year.
Okay. Okay, I'm trying to figure out what he was doing since we have 5 kids and we've been married for 15 years.
Oh, I'm sorry.
So I know he owes a lot of people money, and I was worried if I got money, they'd be coming after me for money.
Right, no, I understand that.
But now I will be with none. So, but did he change it to one person, or was it several people?
Unfortunately, I can't release that. I'm sorry.
Okay. No, I know you can't tell. We're in the business. My husband is the agent. He's the agent.
Okay.
So,
got it. Okay.
We deal with this business all the time, so I kind of know how it works. But completely surprised.
Right.
We have our 7-year-old with autism that we adopted together, so I'm surprised that she would do that without telling me.
I'm so sorry.
So, I mean, there's nothing you can do about that, even though it's community coverage, and it's his policy.
This is a contract that we have with the insured, exactly. So he's able to make any changes, during the lifetime of the policy.
So, as you could see from that, there were several statements in there. One, Lori said she was completely surprised to learn that it had been changed. That was not something she was expecting. She also said that they had 5 kids, which isn't really true. They have between them 5 kids, but 2 of the 2 boys of Charles's live with their mother and have throughout their marriage. And then in addition, her son Colby is already an adult and is out on his own. So they really only have 2 children at home, but she is telling the insurance spokesperson exactly that she has 5 kids and that she's not going to be able to support them. But she didn't get the insurance policy, whether she wanted it or not. So let's talk a little bit about what the state has proven. So we've got 5 things that I think they were aiming for. The demeanor being off, the lack of injuries to Alex, the lack of evidence that CPR was done despite the claim that it was, the fact that Charles Vallow was shot after he was on the ground, and then they're trying to get into some reasons, some motives why Lori would want Charles Vallow dead. So, and the biggest question of all, I think, is going to be, I think the state will fairly easily prove that Alex Cox killed Charles Vallow. I mean, he admitted that. No one is contesting that Alex Cox shot and that that's what killed Charles Vallow. Everybody admits that. So the question is, was Lori involved in that? Did she have an intent to do that? Let's go ahead and add to the stage this Arizona conspiracy statute. A person commits conspiracy if with the intent to promote or aid the commission of an offense. So there has to be intent, that they agree with one or more person, and at least one of them engages, that one of them will engage in conduct, and one of them actually commits an overt act, does something specific. And so, except no overt act is needed if you are committing a felony, but that really doesn't even matter because there clearly was an overt act. So the big question is, did Lori, with intent, agree with Alex Cox about this? And has the state proven that? That's the hard part right there for them to prove. That's the most difficult part. And that's why they're putting in all of this evidence about the motive, and that they're trying to really dwell and push on that. So just so you understand kind of why, the why behind it all. So let's do a few questions. We have some new members. If you would, let me finish that sentence. If you have a question, would you please put your question marks at the beginning, and that'll help me spot them in the chat. We're not going to do too many questions tonight because we've got our members only live right after this. So we've got to be able to get over to that, and we're already running pretty late. So I want to say special shout out to Ada Shaw, JD, a new YouTube member, and Gringa, also a new member. Welcome. We are so glad to have you. And thank you again to Jackie P for gifting some Lawyerly memberships. I appreciate that very much. All right. So I'm going to be looking for those question marks at the beginning, which will give me my best shot of spotting them. Michael Lalonde asking, what about those green chili chicken enchiladas? Sounds pretty good. It does sound pretty good. It does sound pretty good, unless you're making that recipe that I showed you the pictures of that Becky found for us. Stephen, why aren't they bringing more in about her and Chad's relationship? I think that they're bringing in, they mentioned today, and I think it was for the first time, that Lori and Chad had married. That came out later, but in general, that I think is being excluded because she wasn't married to Chad at the time. So they clearly, if they were having an affair, right, that might be an additional motive for at least wanting to get divorced. But I think they brought in just about everything the judge will allow them in that regard. And if Lori Vallow Daybell testifies, it may be a whole new ball game. There may be a lot more that comes in. Okay, let's see. Who else is asking? Marissa is asking me, don't you think the jury is expecting Tylee to testify? I don't know. It certainly would make a lot of sense. She was pictured there with her mother outside the house. But really, they don't know the story about the bat, Tylee bringing the bat. They don't really know that. All they know is that Alex shot him. That's really all they got. And because the state today put in some pieces of Lori Vallow Daybell's interview with the police, but not all of it. And Lori kept saying the whole thing should go in, and the judge said overruled, and she would say it again periodically. And personally, I really agreed with her. I thought as a matter of completeness, the jury should see the entire interview. It's only like an hour, I think. I think it's less than an hour. So it wouldn't have been incredibly difficult for them. But because unless she testifies, and a lot of that won't come in. So I don't know if they really know Tylee's involvement in that. They may not have enough information to be able to know she should be testifying. Benzo 13 is asking me, if the jury perceives Lori as nuts, can that sway their decision in the case? Well, I think maybe it's hard to tell what they would think about that. What would that mean to them if they think she's dangerous and that she is the kind of person who would kill people? I think it might persuade them toward she's guilty. If they think she's just addled and confused and doesn't really know what she's doing, maybe it would sway them in the other direction. So it kind of depends on how they're reading it. And they're really skimming the surface on the case. They know such a tiny amount of what the public, at least those heavily invested or involved in the case, have known for a number of years. Lee T, do you find it bizarre that Lori is fighting when the prosecutor and judge are trying to protect her from herself? So occasionally she does do that, Lee. You're absolutely right. Occasionally she'll fight against something when the judge is trying to protect her. But I think it's just a matter of misunderstanding. I mean, she's typically told, they're against you, you're over here. So her expectation is you fight against whatever they say. For the most part, I don't think the prosecutor is doing a lot to protect her from herself. I think the judge is doing some more of that. Let's see. Go Duke basketball. What are the jurors thinking when Tylee and Alex don't testify? So I think that they would expect Alex to testify. I'm not sure if they know that he is deceased. I'm trying to remember if Lori has said that at some point. She might have said that, or maybe Adam said that at some point. I don't know that they really understand Tylee's involvement. So I don't know they'll be shocked by that, but I think they will be surprised if Alex never testifies. Maybe they'll think he's in prison. I don't know what they'll think about that. Good question. Sugar Gold, is the judge too lenient on her? I don't think so, Sugar Gold. And typically courts bend over backwards to help pro se defendants. It's a real difficult challenge for the court to try to make sure that they have their constitutional rights protected. I think that's all that's happening. I don't think it's too much at all. I think it's appropriate, and I think the appellate courts would expect that. Mildred asking me, is there a point where the judge helps Lori too much? No, I don't think so. Same as with Sugar Gold. I don't think so. I mean, could they reach a point? Absolutely. I don't think they're even close to that. Francesca's Orchid asking, oh, thank you. You like the pink. I don't know where I got this one, Francesca, but I'll think about it. I don't know. But thank you. I appreciate your comment. Liv, since Lori said she heard one shot in her interview, does that imply Alex shot Charles again when she was gone? Oh, wow, Liv. Okay, so I totally had not thought of that. Wow. Okay, here's what I'm thinking. If the witness is correct who testified today, the medical examiner said it would take at most 2 minutes for death following that first shot through the heart, then, and Lori has time to leave and get out of the house. That's a super interesting question though. But if she has all that time, then I would think there's no reason for Alex to shoot again. I would think that has to happen pretty quick before Charles dies. So Charles is clearly not dead yet, so he shoots again. That would have to be within that 2-minute window, because after that, it's going to be apparent he doesn't need to do that. But what an interesting question. So I guess we honestly don't know the answer to that. Julia asking, so far, do you think the state has proved it? So I really try. That's a great question, Julia. I know a lot of people are wondering about that. I try very hard not to sort of show my cards beforehand before we hit the end of the case, because I want people to know that I'm going to try to give them as unbiased a view of the case as possible. Having covered her trial in Idaho and Chad Daybell's trial, I'm a little less unbiased than I normally would be in this particular case, just because I have so much information, but I'm trying super hard not to say one way or the other. I think that it's a tough thing to prove that Alex and Lori conspired, and I think they're working hard at it. I'll just leave it at that. Estelle Patella asked, we haven't heard anything about the pool party the night that Charles was murdered. Will there be testimony about that? I did hear a phone call from a neighbor. Actually, it was the person who owned the house that Charles and Lori were renting, where Lori was living. And the person who owned the house was saying that very night that Lori had a pool party, maybe even that afternoon, like right after Charles has been shot. I haven't heard any testimony about that. I don't even know for sure. He may have just heard that from somebody. It might have been incorrect. Maybe they had the date wrong. But for sure, the jury doesn't know it, and it's not in evidence. I did hear the same thing, though. I know what you're talking about. Aisha asking me, do you think Lori will throw Tylee under the bus and say she did something to get Alex to shoot Charles? And kind of, in a way, because what she says is, and what she told police right away, I mean, this is first story, Tylee came out of her room with this metal bat. And her idea, Tylee's idea, was to protect Lori and make sure her mother wasn't hurt. She heard all this hubbub and was woken up and came out with the bat. Then Charles took the bat. Charles threatened Tylee and then actually hit Alex with it. That's when Alex got a gun. That's when Alex shot Charles Vallow. So to some degree, that's blaming Tylee, at least to bringing the bat out. Not that she had anything to do with the actual murder. But it does involve Tylee, and it involves Tylee coming out with what ultimately is the instrument that Charles used to hit Alex. That's what the Lori Vallow Daybell story is. Barbette asking, did I hear something about another juror being questioned about being on media and learning details? I saw in accounting that 2 jurors were questioned today about discussion about Social Security. According to one, he had some questions about dealing with Social Security, asked another juror after hearing the testimony about Lori Vallow Daybell's collection, what she was getting in terms of Social Security. And so that juror asked the other juror, and they talked a little bit about Social Security. The judge said, we don't stop talking, do no more talking with each other, stop that now. And you're supposed to just focus on the trial, nothing outside it. And that's, neither one was struck from the jury. Both, nobody wanted it, not the defense, not the prosecution. Everybody allowed them to go forward without objection. So they're both still on the jury panel. They will still be involved. Mel Stiller, if Lori is found guilty, can she appeal on the basis of incompetent counsel? She has waived her right to do that for the most part because of the fact that she took over representation of herself. So for the most part, that's gone. All right. Well, we are about to start our members only. If you are a member, if you're not a member, join us. You can hit the join button down there. We're about to go live right after this. We will be working on chapters 2 and 3 of our true crime novel. There's lots of polls. You'll be interactive. It's a lot of fun. And so I will be over there shortly. Look for the notification, or you can just go to the channel page and you'll see the video pop up there if you're a member. Can't wait to have you there. We will be live again tomorrow night at 7 p.m. Eastern talking about the Lori Vallow Daybell trial. I will see you then. Sorry.